I haven't lost my mind by reading Mein Kampf, but I discovered, reading it in German, that Hitler is a very gifted stylist. He is a marvelous writer. He is not, people say it's turgid, he's an awful, he's illiterate. He writes very well. And you know exactly where he's going with his story. He does make some very compelling arguments. Some of his writing does remind me of the prose of Spengler and other people sort of writing this period. There's a sort of portentous quality, but also very lyrical quality in the way Hitler writes. I could hardly imagine myself losing my mind by reading him, but I think he's a more formidable thinker and a much more compelling stylist than many of his critics, are willing to concede.
So do I share any responsibility if someone becomes a Nazi because I encourage them to read Mein Kampf? If this is a well-adjusted...
No, I would have to assume they were predisposed in this direction when they picked up the book, and this was something you were not aware of when you recommended it.
And what about E. Michael Jones? Do I bear any responsibility because I'm the one who triggered him to the Jewish question?
No. But believe me, he is a self-guided, unguided missile. I mean, whatever he is, that's what he is. And he's simply looking for evidence or anything that even minimal evidence, semblance of evidence to justify his view of the eternal Jewish enemy or of the Catholic Church or whatever the Jews are supposed to be as enemies in a particular book of his. No matter, he just goes around looking for this. Like there may be one German Jewish city planner in Chicago who said, let's tear down these Catholic neighborhoods and put something else there. Well, this would, I'm just hypothesizing here or speculating. I don't really know, but he's always on the lookout for things that confirm his weird view of the world.
How was Hitler, a guy who had no accomplishments in 1919, able to take control of Germany? How did he do it? What was it about him that created such an enormous influence?
I find it very hard to understand his mesmerizing power over the German masses from listening to his speeches, which do not impress me, and they're obviously staged, theatrical, they're almost corny. But they did have a tremendous impact. I mean, this is the argument that Joachim Fest makes in his Hitler biography. I mean, there is a kind of theatrical genius that you find in Hitler. It really is almost like a Wagnerian opera that he's staging. You look at the Nuremberg rallies; they're actually brilliant. It's not because any of the speeches is good. Most of them are, say, could have been delivered by Chicago politicians if they knew German. But it is the staging that's unbelievable. The uniforms, the fact that they have marches in the evening, torchlight marches, which make them look very, very impressive to people. His sense of staging was absolutely brilliant. I think this was a point that Max Reinhardt made, who was the famous Austrian Jewish director and somebody who plays an important role in creating, modern cinematic. That Hitler was like a genius, so that even if the speeches are not, of course, when he would get up and give a speech, he would wait, and he would sort of start. People would be waiting there for 10 minutes before they would hear a word from him. But all of this was sort of carefully contrived to have maximal effect or optimal effect on the listener.
Yeah, but there's been no major academic study of Hitler's rhetoric, and his speeches were incredibly effective. The content, he was able to articulate all the humiliations for the Germans. He was able to articulate their deepest fears. Then he was able to provide an explanation for them, essentially the Jews, and then he was able to inspire them. So it's from a book that Joseph Cotto reviewed, Hitler and Abductive Logic. So he was able to reason from inferences. So he was able to articulate their deepest wounds, their deepest fears, their deepest worries, their deepest humiliations. He was able to sum them up, go to the very depths of the German soul and speak to it, and then provide an explanation for these seemingly disparate, unconnected humiliations, he found a connection to all of them, the Jews, and then he was able to provide an inspiration. So I feel like his rhetoric was far more powerful than what you said.
Yeah, well, there also was the other enemy, the communists, right? The internationalists and the communists who were linked to the Jews, and so were the capitalists. The bad capitalists. He distinguished between raffende Kapitalismus and schaffende Kapitalismus. Raffende Kapitalismus were the grasping capitalists. The other ones were creative capitalists. You see, they were nicer people. But I think what you had were interlocking conspiracies. But still, you know, it's hard for me to feel the excitement of his oratory that people felt. And on the other hand, you know, I hear my colleagues in academia telling me that Obama was a brilliant orator. Now, he may have been a brilliant. It was totally lost on me. I never found any brilliance. But I think, again, people who are ideologically disposed or psychologically disposed to accepting certain sorts of arguments or a certain type of political position might find that rhetoric more effective than I would. You know, being an outsider or somebody who does not share that predisposition.
Paul, can a Jew ever be a German, or can he be at most a German Jew?
Who?
Can a Jew in, say, 1920s Germany or 1890s Germany, can he ever be a German, or at best?
There's no doubt that German Jews thought of themselves as German. Most did.
But were they fooling themselves?
No, I don't think that. I mean, I remember having this debate in graduate school at Yale many years ago. And someone was saying, you know, was laughing at these Jews think, you know, they were Germans, ha, ha, ha. And I said they had every reason to think they were Germans. You know, they were in professions, they spoke German. Their families had been living in Germany for 1,000 years, albeit one might say in ghettos for a long time. But even the language they spoke was, you know, a medieval form of German. So, you know, the greatest Jewish writers were writers in German. So they did feel a kinship to German culture. For instance, the Jews in Prague always identified themselves as they supported all German institutions. And many of them were German nationalists.
Yeah,
they also supported the Habsburg Empire.
The German Jews thought they were German, but did the non-Jewish Germans think they were part of the same family?
Right.